Welcome back, tarmac tacklers and trailblazers, to the Maximum Mileage Running Podcast. Once again, I'm on my own because my co-host Faye is otherwise engaged. And today I've got a good friend on the podcast. She's a former pro marathon runner, which is what we're going to be talking about mostly today, I think. I don't know, we're going to make this up as we go along, basically. Now an elite ultra marathoner and actually my own coach. So I'm delighted to welcome onto the podcast today, Holly Stables. How are you?
Hello. Greetings, Nick. Nice to see you. Always nice to see you. Always nice to speak to you. How are you?
Yes, very good, thank you. Just back from holiday, as you know, and
the never-ending holiday. I didn't think it was ever going to end.
I know, it actually felt like that. And the last couple of days, me and Ali were sat there going, we're a bit bored now. We're ready to go home. But it was very nice. Corfu was beautiful. I was very happy to be running again. As you know, you haven't been doing much coaching with me recently because I had a hernia operation, but that's all gone quite well. I'm actually 6 weeks post-op today, and I've got the green light to go back full throttle now. So we can get things going again, which is good because we've got a marathon to get ready for and some other things to get ready for, which you're probably going to tell me off about later because you're like, oh, fucking hell, what have you booked that for?
Yeah, like you're saying all of this stuff as if I should know what you're talking about, but I don't know what you're talking about, but I can only imagine.
Yeah, we'll talk about it later. Anyway, thank you for coming on. I'm a little nervous about interviewing you, given your podcasting credentials. For anybody who doesn't know who you are, tell us a little bit about who is Holly Stables.
Oh, God, I mean, people ask me this. I suppose I have like past me's and then present me's. So I guess people that might have heard of me now as Holly Stables would see me as ASICS frontrunner manager. So I look after the UK and Ireland ASICS frontrunner team, which are a bunch of, I have to be careful what I say here, bunch of brand ambassadors. So that's sort of what I do. And also I'm a coach. I don't coach lots of people, but it's sort of something that we do. We try and help people, me and Pete, my husband, get stronger and faster. That's our sort of main aim. Yeah. I'm still running reasonably competitively. You say elite ultra runner. I cringe when you say that because I don't really feel like that anymore. In fact, I probably never really felt like an elite runner at all. You know, the term professional always sat uncomfortably with me because I'd never been a... So the past me, when I was Holly May, then Rush, got my name then, I was never a runner as a kid or anything like that, or really in my 20s. And then it wasn't until I sort of started running properly where I sort of joined a club and got a coach just because I was suggested that I should get a coach to help me because I was sort of like pissing in the wind, really. And that I found that I had a talent for it. It wasn't something I ever sort of aimed for, if you know what I mean. And then I found that I was good at running long, like marathons sort of stuff. So I sort of started off as a charity, like fun runner. The first race I did was London Marathon, which I did for charity, and I loved it. And from there, I sort of got into running, sport as such. And from there, I went on and got faster and got my UKA vest, GB vest for some friendlies. And in fact, my first GB vest was a Singapore Marathon, which is just awful. Oh. It was so hot and humid. I mean, you know, did you live? I was going to say, you lived in Singapore.
I used to live there for a year, and it is basically, it's either hot and humid and pissing it down with rain or sunny. There's no in between.
Yeah. It was no rain when I did it. It was just both of those. And it was one of those sort of races that lulled you into like, oh, this is fine. You start off, and by halfway, I'd lost half of my body weight in sweat, and I was really struggling, and there were people like the elites just on the side of the road lying down. I just thought, oh, this isn't fun. But that's another story. I finished and just about. And then from there, I went on to like beyond my wildest dreams. I never, ever expected to go to any sort of championship. So to be selected, go to the trials at London and be selected to go to the European Championships was like a dream come true because it was a really sort of special championships to me. And I had to work really hard to get into that team. And then from my placement in the European Champs, this was 2010, so, you know, back in the 1940s. From there, I got selected to run for England for the Commonwealth Games, which again was never on my radar. And then, you know, and then various other sort of half marathon races for England and GB. And then after that, I decided I kept on running the same sort of marathon times. I mean, literally ran the same marathons. I think 5 marathons I ran within sort of 5 or 10 seconds of my PB,
Blimey.
which, as much as that, lots of people would say, oh, you're probably one of the most consistent marathon runners. And in fact, I think for 4 or 5 years in a row, I was ranked between 6th and 7th in the UK, but I never moved up, and I could never break that sort of 6 minute, it was 5:59 miling for the marathon. I couldn't get any faster, even though I had managed to run my half and my 10K time did suggest that I should be able to run sort of between 2:34, 2:35, but I just could never crack it. And I just got sick of the constant training, if I'm honest, to try to do marathon training. You know what it's like doing marathon. I mean, I'm training for a marathon at the moment, and I'm just exhausted. It's so different to
It is, yeah.
sort of trail marathon running. It's a different feeling, and that I just want to lie on the sofa after training at the moment. And I'm not training. I remember that this is how I felt pretty much throughout all of that period of my life when I was training, because I was doing 2 marathons a year, and a lot of the time I was so spent that I'd struggle to walk around like Sainsbury's to do some shopping. I just couldn't do it, and I was like that yesterday. But I'm waffling now, but that's what it was like. And then I just I went to, I think it was 2012. I went to Houston. I went to America because I wanted to race in America. I wanted to find a fast race, and I wanted something early in the year. It's in January, so I wanted to train through the winter and then go out there. And I went out there. I didn't wear a watch because I thought maybe that was the problem. I was getting too obsessed with my watch. I came around the corner and I saw the time thing, the clock at the finish, and it was like 2:37, and it was clicking over. And I came in and I was 2 seconds outside my PB. And I just literally like took my shoes off, and I was like, I just can't be bothered with it. I just don't want to do it anymore. Sick of it. And then that's when I decided to do something completely different and try running even further.
Which does sound crazy, but going back to your point, like training for road marathons, I say it all the time, it's the hardest distance and discipline in running to train for. It's those long, constant road miles, and it gets monotonous, and then that starts to play on your physicality, and it's just, you're totally right. People go, oh, well, surely it's harder to train for a 100-mile ultra, but actually, yes, there are elements of it that are going to be harder, but it's not as monotonous, and I think that's what makes it less difficult.
I think also when you're trying to run marathons hard and fast, and everyone's trying to run marathons fast in their own way.
Yeah.
But I sort of see it, especially if you're trying to run under sort of 3 hours, and it's like every hard run, or like a marathon pace run, or if it's just a little bit slower than marathon pace or whatever, a little bit faster, it's all just the thing with a marathon. With a marathon that quick, you're sort of on the edge the whole time. So it's like the longest period of time you can be running quite fast and just hanging in there, as opposed to 100. You can take your time at the beginning a little bit. Well, you can take your time throughout the whole thing, but you shouldn't be feeling taxed after running half of it. Whereas with a marathon, I would quite often set off, and within the first 5K, I'd be like, right, this is
it's going to be a war.
I've got to keep this pace up for a couple more hours. However, I will say, going to ultras as a marathon runner and then coming back to doing, because I've never really left doing marathons. I've accepted that I'm running slower, but I kept coming back to the marathons in terms of the mentality of it. It's definitely slightly easier mentally, because I can always think back to those really, really long, hard ultras, uncomfortable ultras. I call it sort of uncomfortable. That, like, I've ran for 30 hours or something whilst being sick down my front, and stopping to shit myself every 10 miles. Whereas in a marathon, I'm like, this is going to be done. This is going to be done in under 3 hours. I can do this. But the marathon for me was always about time, and that's horribly stressful. Whereas ultras, sometimes I will have a bit of a time thing, but it's really just about me and the distance, the course, what's happening that day. I think it was Paula Radcliffe that said in a marathon, she had like 3 goals or something. You break it down, you'd be running, and you could say, you start off the race going, right, I'm going for a PB. And then so far into it, you're like, okay, I'll go for, this sort of time, 2:40. And then at the end of it, you're like, do you know what? I just want to get it done. And then, your goals can change if things aren't going right. And that's why being mentally focused and strong for all of these types of races is half the battle, especially in ultras.
Yeah, you can. I mean, with ultras, you can only do so much physical training. At some point, your mind is
Oh yeah.
going to have to take you through. And I don't know. I don't know with you. I mean, I asked this question actually of pretty much all of my guests that come on. Like, what is your why when it comes to ultras? You know, when you're 80 miles in and you've still got another 20 to go, what? You know, and you're like, why the fuck am I doing this? What? How do you answer that?
I guess it probably depends on the ultra. Although I try and pick ones like the really big ones, like 100 milers or something, or mountain stuff. I pick that race. I always pick a race that means something to me, or there's a reason for doing it. I don't really want to do just something for the sake of it. I'll do, so for me, you know, obviously doing like UTMB or Comrades or the Arc or something, for me, there is something special about it. So therefore, I've chosen to do that and I get to be here. But I think that the why, I know I always ask people this is the why, because the why is going to be different, I think, every time. But I think for me, I have got I love the feeling. It's really weird. I love the feeling of like seeing how far you can go, like your body. And I also really love the feeling afterwards, which is weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
I love the feeling of being totally spent. And then I almost slightly mourn it a few days later or a week later, because that's the high for me. I guess it would be like other people's highs for taking drugs or something. When I'm doing it, there's loads of questions. I mean, we all do it, don't we? Like, yeah, why the fuck am I doing this? Well, I could just be really normal. I could be like a shopping mall on a Saturday. I mean, it's my idea of hell, you know, going shopping, having lunch with my friends, drinking at lunchtime. That's just not me.
Yeah.
So for me, it is about, experiencing how far my body can go. And then when you get to that point of, you think so for me, UTMB in 2018, I felt like that was as far as I could get my body to go. And therefore, after that, every other race I've done, I have that biofeedback back to that race where I felt like I couldn't go on any further, but I did. It's like I had the worst case of food poisoning and flu. It wasn't, but that's how it felt during a race, running 100 miles around Mont Blanc, where just everything was coming out of me. I was dizzy, I was delirious. And, you know, you get in, you've got 50K to go, and you just say to your crew, I don't know, how am I actually going to leave this tent? But you either decide to do it or you don't. And then if you do it and you finish, you think, okay, right, so I could do it. So all of those things are, I guess it comes down to the sort of person you are, because there's lots of people who don't want to do that. And I respect that. So what's wrong with me that I want to put myself through that? There's probably lots of answers to that. There's lots of reasons to that. If you go back into what's happened to me in the past, maybe that's a reason why I want to do it.
Yeah.
That's a whole other podcast, probably.
Probably. Because, yeah, I mean, you have had, particularly around that pro pressure, you know, when you were pro, did you feel like you had that pressure? Yeah, I mean, I've got Renee McGregor's book here, and there's a little excerpt in there. Did you have issues with, you know, pressure from the way you ate, the way you looked? Was that kind of thing there in the past?
No, I think that pressure I put that on myself. I think the way I ate was purely because I was stupid and I got sucked into so when I first started running, I was a normal size, you know, I was just normal, I think. And then I lost a lot of weight very quickly. And I think that sort of turned a switch in my head and then I was running quicker and I was running better. So therefore I thought that if I got smaller, then I would run faster, which, let's be honest, there is a correlation to that. I'm not going to deny that, but it's not something you can keep going for a long period of time, which is what I did. And then as a result, I had issues. My bone density was so bad. I was very unlucky. There's lots of people get away with it, but I wasn't. I've managed to turn that around. And then the other thing is obviously not being an athlete as a youngster or as a junior. I always felt that sort of imposter syndrome on the start line. I always felt like much bigger than all the other girls, especially if you're lining up against a load of African runners who are just genetically smaller than most of us. And the other thing, which is, you know, it's still now, but sort of back in the day, it's like we all wore crop tops and knickers, and you're so exposed, standing on a start line, basically in your underwear, and you're like, oh God, you know, I definitely feel like I've eaten too many muffins this week or something, which of course I hadn't. But I don't think that I feel like that was so far away now in my life. I'm so beyond that now. But I think in terms of doing the things I do now, I think that it's probably, my childhood, just where I was brought up about being, just hardworking, being out in all weathers and getting it done. There was no option of not finishing things and stuff like that. So maybe that's what it is, and various other things that went on in my life. But yes, I just think that I'll always try and push myself. But I'm saying that, though, I'm much more relaxed about my training now. I don't feel the need to overtrain, which is what I did. I always thought that more was better. And so I will try and do, probably, I was one of those people that would finish my run and run up and down the street to get the mileage in. Now I'm more than happy at finishing at 4.8 miles. And also a certain mileage a week I had to do. I had to do so many miles a week. That was the other thing. And I guess that's something, as a coach, I've taken on board with athletes. I think from my own coaching experience, being coached myself, and I've been coached by two very good coaches, what is that having my training given to me weeks in advance was a very bad thing, because I was so rigid. If I had to move it, if I couldn't do a session on a certain day or a long run on a certain day, for some reason, I would still make myself do it because it was on the program. And if I didn't do it, then I wasn't doing it properly, and I wasn't a good athlete, and everyone else would be doing the right thing, and I wouldn't. So therefore, that's why I really only coach ideally, I would coach daily, because I think that you feel differently every day.
Yeah.
And the adaptations take longer with some people, shorter with other people. And that's getting to know that person that you're working with. That's why I don't really work with loads of people, because I just can't. So I think that, so for me now, I literally take each day as it comes. I have a rough idea of what I'm doing, but really I don't know what I'm doing training tomorrow wise.
And is that through your choice or through the way you work with your coach?
Both. So, I have a coach mentor, I would say. We work together. I will say, look, I think probably potentially I should be doing this tomorrow, and this is what we should be doing. And then, so for instance, like yesterday, he had an idea of what he'll send me something at 10 o'clock for the next day. And I got that message, and I was just like, I've got to be honest with you. I will struggle to do what you want me to do tomorrow. I'll normally always do everything. But I said, so yesterday, he wanted me to do, bearing in mind I've got 2 weeks to the marathon, he wanted me to do 2 hours, but the last half an hour, like at threshold. So when I say threshold, for me, that means sort of half marathon pace, maybe a bit quicker. And I just said, I can give it a go, but I'll be honest, I really need to just do a easy, slowish run, which is what I did, because I'm just shattered. And so he was just like, okay, yeah, you know your body better than me, you're probably right. So, but that's, to be honest, that's probably the first time in a long time that I've said that to him. Normally I'm just like, yeah, and then I'll do it, and it's right, because I'll be honest, he's genius, and I'm not.
You work with Alan Story, right?
I work with Alan Story, yeah. Some people would think, who the hell's he?
Yeah, so who is he?
He is,
you tell me.
Yeah, he is a stalwart of the endurance marathon, London Marathon coaching fraternity ever. If you Google Alan Story, and that's Storey, he's coached some of the best UK and globally marathon runners we've ever seen, and Olympians, etc. And he still coaches some amazing runners. He coaches Chris Thompson, Lee Partridge, amongst lots of other people. And he was the race director for London Marathon for many years. And he's also been, led lots of other federations as an endurance head coach. He's been in China. He's been all over the place. So, yeah, he is really clever. And his background, he was a runner as well, but he ran marathons and he also ran ultras. And that's why I approached him after I finished Houston. Later in that year, I said, look, I want to run Comrades. Can you help me? And we sat down over a pint in a pub, and he said, okay, let's give it a go. And that was 10 years ago.
Nice.
So, and Alan's always been a really good friend. So, but yes, Alan certainly I don't get True Coach or whatever. I don't have anything like that. It's sent to me in an email or a text message or at a pub.
By a pigeon.
Beers.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, let's do that. And I've got to be honest, you get to races and you think, what have I actually done in this build-up? I'm not really sure. And I do the race, and I'll do better than I expected. And I just think he is a genius. for some of the sessions are so different to anything that most people would set. Really, they're trickery. I think I call them trickery. So
Okay.
you on paper you'd be like, okay, yeah, and then you do it, and then the outcome is this. So he's very clever.
Yeah.
I won't get 12,400s, put it that way.
You won't get what, 12,400s?
I wouldn't get 12,400s. It's not
No,
like
I don't,
that.
I don't think you've ever given me
He's not
12,400s
that.
either.
No, and you'd probably see that I've had obviously a lot of influence from him and my coach before, who was my husband at the time, from their training and various other coaches that I have looked up to or worked with. So yeah, it's some of it is quite interesting. I think some of the training I get is interesting. It's not a lot of the textbook stuff, but it's quite clever. And it's also experiment. I think once you get to know an athlete, you can experiment a little bit. It doesn't have to be really textbook. You can experiment and see what happens.
Yeah, 100%.
As long as you know them.
Yeah, 100%. That's exactly what I do with my athletes. I get bored of stuff like 12x400s. Okay, they're nice.
Anyone can do that out of a textbook. Yeah,
exactly. And actually, I think one of the things I find, particularly with the kind of people I work with, is that actually you need to keep it interesting and fun. And just getting them to go and run up and down a hill for an hour isn't a lot of fun. But if you mix it up a bit, it is going to be fun. It might not be straight out of the textbook, but experimental is a great word to use, I think. So
yeah, and mixing it up is really, really good.
Yeah.
He really encourages doing races. And the other thing that I love as well, which I try and take forward in my coaching, is nothing's really out of the question. So if I say to him, look, there's this race, and he'll be like, oh God, there's this race.
That's a bit like me and you, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. That's why when you send me stuff, I'm like, oh God, I see what Alan must feel like. I'd be like, there's this 200-mile race in blah, blah. And he'd be like, oh, fucking hell. All right, when is it? It's that sort of stuff, whereas I'm sure it's because I'm the later stage of my life where he, if I was probably aiming something really, really big, he'd be like, I don't think you should do that. But, he'll always facilitate that sort of dream or wish or something that I want to do. And that's what I'm here for other people, hopefully, that I'll always say, look, I'm just here to help you do what you want to do. And if you want to go and if you said to me, I want to train for a 1,500-meter race, well, I'll go, all right, then that's going to hurt, but let's give it a go. Stuff like that.
You don't have to worry about that, but okay, yeah, I get your point. Park run's about as short as it gets for me.
That's one thing he's not a massive fan of, I have to say, and I don't know why.
Oh, I love a big park.
Yeah, he's not a big part. He goes, oh, yeah, I don't think he feels that. I don't know what he thinks about that, but yeah, I just do them secretly. He never knows.
Yeah. Well, look, thank you for your background.
Sorry, I'm still going on about it. Yeah.
No. And I was just going to say, like, some of the things you said, even though, yes, you've been in that quote unquote cringy term that you don't like, a pro athlete in the past. I think some of the things that you talk about and stuff that we do together is that it isn't all about, here's your plan and you've got to stick to the plan. We need you doing this arbitrary, 100 miles a week or whatever it is. It's not about that, particularly for us people who've got shit going on. We've got kids and dogs and lives and,
I think that's really, really important thing to say, because that's the other thing that I find with lots of people or people I work with, but also just I think when you see things on Instagram and social media, is that I think people forget that there's stress is stress. There's running stress by doing your 10 by 400s or whatever, or your 80 miles a week or whatever. You've got your running stress, but then you always have your life stress, which is your kids. You've got to look after the kids, you've got to walk the dog, you've got to do the cleaning, you've got to do the shopping, and then things like other factors that are going on in your life, like your work, or maybe someone's ill in your family or something, and it's all of this stuff which can be even more stressful because it's there the whole time, whereas the running is there whilst you do it and you're a bit tired afterwards. But so for instance, like Lizzie, who I coach, like she'll say to me like, oh, do you think I should just do a few more miles? Do you think I should just do an extra 10 miles a week or an extra 5 miles a week? And I'm like, well, you can do, but let's look at how your life is at the moment. You've got 4 kids, you work in the evenings, you're also doing a cleaning job at the weekend. You've got a husband who's away a lot of the time, you've got a dog that you're walking as well. Like, do you think that running an extra 5 miles a week is actually going to help you in any way? Probably not. It's probably going to make you worse. So that sort of stuff, it's like everything, there's a stress. And it would be great if you could maybe run more miles in a week, but let's be honest, I don't think that's going to happen, and I don't think you need to, because you've got these other stresses. If we could sell the children on eBay, put the dog on Gumtree, make Ben not go to work all the time, then yes, let's put another 10 miles a week onto your training. But at the moment, there's no point, because you're doing quite well as it is.
Exactly. And yeah, you said it to me. It's not like we're trying to win the world championship here. We're,
I know.
yes, we want to be better runners, and we want those coaches in our lives to help us get better. But come on, we're not trying to win the world championships. And I mean, you've never once have you had me come to you going, I don't think I'm doing enough miles.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important for anybody listening to just take that. This whole arbitrary, I must be doing this number of miles per week is, it is exactly that. It's arbitrary. It doesn't mean anything. It's actually
And
more about
also,
what you
and
do.
that's the problem with social media and stuff like that. I didn't have that when I was training. I mean, I just had Athletics Weekly, which came out on a Thursday, and that would have it would be an athlete of the week that would put their training in. And let's be honest, it was bullshit. They would put all this stuff about what they did. And you'd be like, fucking hell, he's doing how many miles? And this was the days when people weren't doing like 140, 150 miles a week, which some people are doing. They were doing this, they were doing cross country at the weekend, they were doing track on Tuesday, they were doing tempo on a Thursday, cross country on a Saturday, long run on Sunday.
Mhm.
And that's what they did all the time. And that's what we were brought up on, bread and butter, really. But now you're seeing all this other stuff that Instagrammers are doing, athletes, influencers, whatever, and we're just like comparing ourselves. Well, we shouldn't be, but they are. So that's why when people come, well, blah blah's doing this, should I do it? No, I mean, everyone does different stuff. There's lots of very good athletes who are doing very low mileage or just cross training and they're doing very, very well, but everyone's different.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, and my little hashtag on Strava, on Instagram, no one gives a fuck about your pace on Strava. And that's another thing that's just winds me up because people think they need to be out there hammering the miles. They've got to be fast, always fast. And you just don't.
Why,
You don't even have Strava, do you?
No, I would never. It would be very bad for me because I would unfortunately be one of those people. Because a lot of my runs, look, if you saw my runs on Strava, a lot of them would be fucking slow because I'm out with the dog who stops all the time for a wee. I don't stop my watch every time he does a wee or does a poo. I can't be bothered with it because I forget to press go. Yeah, so I just don't bother. In fact, I don't take my watch all the time anyway. So I don't even. I should show you actually, but I've got next to me like a whole row of books, all row of diaries going back from I think 2004 or 5 of every year of my training diaries with everything in. I mean, it'd be funny if I opened one now and opened a page. It was terrifying. And I wrote everything down in there. It wasn't even a diary. It was a book. So I would do the columns with the day, everything. Yeah. And I'd write everything down, like the weather, how much I weighed. That's what I do every week. I'd weigh myself. I don't have scales now. I have no idea how much I weigh. And maybe what I was wearing, even things like that, how I felt, which was miserable. But I had everything in there. So I'll be honest, I haven't written anything down since probably in the last 8 years.
Oh, I thought you were still doing it.
No, I have nothing. I don't write anything down. I have no idea. I won't remember what I did last week. All I'll have is all my emails from Alan. So I could go back and probably write it down, but I've got none of the times. I've got nothing. I don't know anymore. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, does it? Because I'm just running. It did then, and it is very interesting to look back on. And it probably would be good to look back on and say, well, that. But now it just doesn't matter. Yeah. But I would say it's a great thing. I think in terms of athletes, maybe. In fact, I've never even asked any of you, have I? If you write it down, I just presume because you will have it on your watches. But is to have it written down. It is quite good to look back and say, well, this is what I did. But I can look back on True Coach, which is the platform that we use, and look back and say, oh, well, actually, 6 weeks ago, you ran roughly this session, because I rarely set the same session twice. And I'll say, this is what you ran. So this is, you've come on this much or you haven't. Whereas now I don't write any, and for years I haven't written anything down. So I've got no idea what I did this time last year.
No, I mean, I don't write in books, but, you use True Coach, and I always comment on all my sessions. And then I've got Training Peaks, which I use, and my data goes in there. So I copy and paste the same note in there, just so, in 5 years' time, if I want to look back, I can do that. But yeah, no, I thought you were still doing it. I was going to say, it's not a word I would normally associate with you, but I was going to say that's really cute that you write it down in a book.
I mean, I've got, let me just get one, it's quite funny, 2014. I mean, oh no, this is the other thing, actually. There's some where you'll open it and there'll be blank pages for probably like 4 to 8 weeks.
Yeah.
And that's because I got injured and I couldn't bear to write anything down. So sad. And there's so much tough. Of that.
Yeah.
So let's look at this one.
Wow.
That
looks like it's from the relics of the Incas or something.
Yeah. This is 2005. And it's all just written like this.
Oh, wow.
Just piles of it. I mean, I train twice a day. probably at least 5 days a week. And some of it is just horrible blood test results. Just sorry, this isn't very good YouTubing, is it? That I'm just sitting here looking through a book, but yeah, all sorts of stuff really. Oh, very sore throat, glands up, mouth ulcers,
Oh, God.
exhausted. Yeah, just awful. But then I would go and do a race and run, and this is, for instance, Bupa Great Capital Run. I don't remember doing that 10K. I put down the temperature, the humidity. I'm not happy with my time. Very bad stomach. 35:42. Yeah, just stuff like that. All the sessions I did, some crazy sessions, crazy times, but there you go.
Yeah. This is really, really interesting that just how into it you were. And now you look back on it and you're like, was it that important? Did I need to do that? I don't know. We get so into these things, don't we? And we, stress ourselves out to the point of, oblivion sometimes. And do we really need to do that to ourselves? Can we not just kind of live in the moment and appreciate things a bit more?
I think that's why moving away from that sort of road racing thing for me, so going to the ultras, that it didn't matter so much, that sort of stuff. It was that's the one thing I found when I started doing trail races or ultra trail races, whatever, with the people that I talked to who'd never done road running or anything, or track stuff or anything like that, how they had no idea about what their lactate threshold time or pace was, or how many millimoles of lactate they produced running 8-minute miling or 6-minute miling or whatever, because they didn't care. And for me, that was just like a little bit like, oh, thank God I can maybe. It was just stressful. It was really stressful. Everything was really stressful. And that's why I stopped trying to push all the time. I was just stressed. I would get so nervous before going to the track on a Tuesday night. Every Tuesday night I went to Bath Uni to go on the track. And for me, it was like a competition every night, because I'd be running with the lads and it was like, I just need to like push myself. I'd always have an upset stomach before I went, and I'd get back late. I wouldn't be able to eat properly because I got back so late. I was eating like dinner at 9:30 and I couldn't eat enough food. So it'd be like beans on toast or something. And then I'd have to be up in the next day before work and have to do my midweek long run, which was about 14 miles. And I'd be so tired. And then, it was just like this constant let up. And then on a Thursday, I'd be back at the uni doing threshold runs around the grass area in the dark. It was just in the rain and stuff. I hated training in the winter. It just felt like it was relentless. And I missed quite a lot of things, like I missed my brother's wedding.
Oh, no.
It's just really, because I had a race, but I didn't have to do that race. So yeah, I do look, but then I do, don't get me wrong. I never thought I'd go to the European Championships. For me were just a big highlight because I exceeded how well I would do, and it was like my first proper major championship, and that was amazing. And I don't want to sound ungrateful because I am grateful, but there's quite a long period of time of that time where I just wasn't happy.
Yeah. Was the European Championships the one you won a medal?
Yes. So we won a medal, and our medal was upgraded because some people in the European Championships chose to have extra porridge oats on their breakfast.
Oh yeah.
So we actually went from bronze to silver, and obviously I went up in placings. I think I went up like 4 places or something. So, and there were 6 of us in the team who qualified to go, which was in itself, I was amazed. I was so pleased. I think I was like the 6th person to get in. I can't remember, 5th or 6th. So that was London Marathon, which was the trials. And then the top 3 English people at the European Championships also qualified for the Commonwealth Games. And I came 3rd. So I got to go to Commonwealth Games. Yeah, but that was not very long after the European Championships. So I'd ran 2 marathons already by then, like hard marathons, taxing. Like when we started this conversation, how tiring and exhausting it is, especially when you're trying to run the fastest time you've ever ran. So to run that, especially in Barcelona where it was so hot, it was like July the 24th at 11 a.m. So it was so roasting. I'd done Singapore, but obviously I wasn't running as fast as I was in Barcelona. And also, you're in a team and you need to be as quick as you can. So that took a lot out of me. And then a few months later, I had to go to Delhi to run the Commonwealth Games. which was really hard again because it was hot and humid and, just the country. We had a holding camp in Doha, which is the worst place to try and train for a marathon.
Mm.
So it really wasn't enjoyable. Again, I was really, I will always be grateful that I went.
What time of year were you in Doha?
October.
Yeah, still pretty hot.
I
live in Dubai, so yeah, I know.
Yeah, it was like you'd go out of the hotel and it was like being stuck in an oven.
Yeah.
So we could only run on treadmills in the Aspire Centre. Right. So yeah, it was just, and that was 2 weeks we were out there for. A great experience because again, the Commonwealth Games are a multi-sport event, which I don't have the Europeans, it's just athletics. So to be involved with people swimming and staying in the village, that's a cool experience. But I have to say, the marathon was at the very end, the last event of the Commonwealth Games, and it was all a bit of everyone else was partying, and the Australians were throwing fridges out of the top balconies and their swimming pool, and we're all like trying to get some sleep before our marathon. So to be honest, the marathon just was like, I just need to get this done with. And so so all of those things were just stressful and brilliant, and I'm glad I've got to do them. But would I do it again? I don't know.
No. Well, let's segue onto, there's lots of people now doing things like London, Manchester, all of the spring marathons, and I'm one of those people. So let's talk a little bit about what have I got in store, and kind of what would you say to people that are starting to get ready now for their spring marathons? Where should they be at? Obviously, that's going to depend on the goal, but at least what are we kind of thinking about, particularly over the dark nights? It's pissing down with rain.
Stay in, watch TV.
Stay in, bollocks to it.
Well, I would say, coming from someone who's still training for an autumn marathon, I can't even think about what's going to happen in spring. But just tell me can you just remind me which marathon you're doing in the spring?
Manchester.
That's right. I thought so. Good one. I would say at the moment, again, it also depends on how many weeks you plan to train for your marathon. Because some people have very different ideas of how long they should train for a marathon for. I don't like to train for a marathon over a really long period. I guess it depends on what standard you are. I don't even think it makes a huge amount of difference what standard you are. I think if you're going to do a massive, some people do like 20 weeks of marathon training. I got to be honest, I would just be sick of it. I would say so we've got a few people who are training for Manchester, London, any of those sort of races, and some of them have only just finished their autumn marathon. So the last thing they want to do is turn around and start training for a marathon again, because you're just wheel again, and I don't think that's a good idea. I think the best thing that you would be doing now, if you're going to be doing a marathon in April, it's different because some people might be doing Seville or something, which is earlier, but say if they're doing one in April, I would just try and get a really fast block of training in before you start building to doing your marathon training, because I tell you what, you'll be sick of it. You'll be absolutely sick of it if you start doing loads of miles now. And if you can just get yourself as fast as you can, sort of over, up to sort of 10K would be ideal. Get yourself strong and ready to take on the miles. Therefore, not that you should only do strength work, periodizing it. You should be doing strength work all the time. That's the other big change that obviously I made.
Yeah.
And when I say strength work, into the gym 3 or 4 times a week, you can do it once a week. You can do it once a week and have amazing results. Lizzie, for instance, because she's a very busy person, she does 1 training session a week, and it's very specific and it works. So if you can get to the gym once a week, make that a part of your life forever. And get yourself nice and strong, get yourself faster over the shorter distances. I would say at this time of the year, apart from the ultra runners and all of us who feel the need that we have to go out and run for miles and miles at the weekend, you really only need to be doing like 90 minutes max. You really don't need to do any more. If you're doing marathons twice a year or once a year, take advantage of this time where you're not good. Because that's what I say to everyone. I can assure you, after week 6 or 8 of the marathon training, you'll be like, oh my God, why did I want to do this earlier? So most people are going to start training after Christmas, aren't they? January-ish time. Make sure that you're all ready for that. You're strong, you're fast, and you've also entered races. That's the other thing I tell everyone to do. Look at your races now because they get full up.
Yeah.
And pick your races accordingly. Some people like to race a lot. I don't have a problem with that. Unless, I say I don't have a problem with that. It depends on what races you want to do. if you want to do short races every weekend in marathon build up, that's fine, but you're going to have to do your long stuff in the week, which is not work. It doesn't work for most people. So pick your races accordingly in terms of marathon prep. For me, a half marathon's really good. Sort of anything around 6 weeks out is a really good indicator.
Yeah.
And I always used to find a 20 miler. They're becoming much more common. They're really good ones to do. The only problem is a lot of them are quite early. Yeah. I used to always do Bramley 20, but that was February, early February. And quite a few times I would run really, really, really well there. And then I'd get sick because I was too ahead of the game there, and I would keep pushing. So I think you've got to be really careful with that. I mean, a 20 miler maybe in March is quite a good one. It's great time.
There's a few good ones around in the UK now. There's a Cardiff 20 miler in March. There's
is there? Oh, I didn't know the Cardiff one.
There's Hallavington near me, which is not super flat, but it's 20 miler in March. Gloucester, yes. Yeah, there's a few around.
There's San Domenico.
Where's that?
Wales, Merthyr Tydfil, out and back on the Taff Trail.
Oh, yes.
Good, that one.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely have a look at those because they're just great. I mean, I always say to people, like, how easier is it going to be to go out and do a 20 miler with other people around you with some drink stations, probably a flat course, as opposed to you going out on Sunday after you've been to the pub on a Saturday night and doing, half of that or more at marathon pace. Because I tell you what, it'll feel a lot harder. If you can get in a group, it'll be much easier.
Yeah, and you're faffing around with things like, driving somewhere to put your bottles and, or running loops, which is just soul destroying.
Yeah, or getting your husband or whatever to be on a bike next to you, and no one wants that.
No.
Especially not him.
You want Pete next to you.
He wouldn't do it anyway. He'd be too busy doing his, I don't know, God knows what.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So as we start to wrap up then, so don't start too early. And I absolutely share that sentiment because marathon training, this is the thing, marathon training is so hard. And if you are going to start thinking about your marathon now, fine, start thinking about it now, but don't start doing marathon sessions. Don't start doing marathon sessions now. Get fast, get a fucking fast half marathon in you at some point between now and February is what I say. And then have a think about something in March to get you tuned up for the marathon in April.
I think also some people ask about how long they should be training for. And I think anything really between 12 and 16 weeks is more than enough. I mean, I used to do 10-week build-ups because I was training all the time and I just got much more specific. And that's the whole point with any sort of training. You should just specify the closer you get to the event. The same as if you're doing an ultra, you specify, closer to the event. That closest to the event obviously varies according to what you're training for. But yeah, so what was I going to say? I was going to say the other thing. It's about, just being prepared. So preparing. Oh, no, that's it. That's the other thing I was going to say is also think about your goal. Because is your goal achievable?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying I will always try and help anyone's dreams, but if someone comes to me and their goal is ridiculous, you have to be a bit more, let's think about that in 12 months' time. Let's go for 3:15 instead of 3 to start with when you're a three and a half hour marathon runner or something like that. So you do have to be achievable, but then equally I think some people may be a bit too soft and just go for it.
I think that's why it's good to race not too often, but often enough to see where you're at and test things out. And if you 12 weeks out from the marathon and you're a 35-minute 5K runner and your target is 3 hours, well, you might not be getting there.
Yeah, you might be disappointed.
Yeah, you might be disappointed with passing the halfway mark at 3 hours. So yeah, it is about being realistic with yourself, isn't it? And being kind to yourself as well. Some people go in with these, goals are great, but fucking hell, don't be too hard on yourself. Again, we're not trying to win the world championships. Let's be sustainable with our running. Let's not just focus on that one race. And I think you've illustrated that pretty well, as we've been talking, that, when you are too hard on yourself, it becomes unsustainable and we do get fed up. And okay, you've continued to run, you've diverted it in a different direction, but some people just get fed up and they stop.
And there's nothing wrong with stopping. There's nothing wrong with stopping. It's, oh God, I mean, I've so many times I thought, I just don't know if I don't want to compete anymore. But I do. I want to keep on. I think the other thing that you have to come to terms with as you get older, like also your training years. I mean, I'm never going to PB again. I'm just not, and I'm okay with that. But there was that transition period where I had that sort of morning feeling of, and there's, races that I'll maybe do now or I would avoid doing because I know that I'll be disappointed. Yeah. So, and, that's me being honest because I'm not the athlete that I was and I can't run the times I wanted, especially over short distances. I might be able to still run fast over longer distances, but I'm still not going to be anywhere near the times I ran. And I have to be happy that there's going to be people coming past me that, back in the day I would have easily been faster, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. No, but I am okay with that.
Well, I'm going to ask you a question right here on the podcast as we're recording, because you texted me the other day saying, I don't know if I believe the stats that the time that my stats are telling me that I might do. Which marathon is it you're doing now? So
we're doing Porto in
that's
2 weeks. Well, yeah, 2 weeks yesterday.
So Holly texted me the other day and she said, I don't know if I believe what my stats are telling me I'm going to run. So what are your stats telling you that you should run the Porto Marathon in?
Well, it's different. You put me on the spot. So the other thing I'll say is that my heart rate data has changed massively. So my heart rate has dropped a lot. Now some people be like, oh, that's good. Well, it's not really. So my heart rate is much, much lower, and therefore I can get it really high. I can get it high, but only for short periods. And the reason why it's dropped quite a lot, well, there's two things. I've got older, I'm 46 now, so it will drop. But also it's because I haven't over the years, because I've been doing the ultra stuff, even though I've been doing the marathons, but I've been predominantly running for long periods of time slower. And if you don't work enough, which is what I get you guys to do, if I don't work enough at that higher heart rate, so let's say 160 to 170, which I haven't, then your body gets used to that, and I'm used to. So as a result, my heart hasn't been used to working that hard. Historically, I was running marathons, to give you an idea, heart rate wise, around 170s. And I ran Comrades, which anyone who knows, it's a 90-kilometer road race non-stop.
Did you go uphill or downhill?
I went uphill,
okay.
And it was one of the hottest years. I ran the whole thing, average heart rate 164, which is really quite high. So I was working. Yeah, I think I averaged it was like 7:30 miling for the whole way. But let's be honest, this was the first year this was the year after Houston. So I was in quite good shape then, but I'd never ran that far before. And I did that purely by heart rate. So if we said now, if I had to run 165 heart rate, I wouldn't be able to. It would be so hard for me to get my heart rate up that high. It would feel like I was going to be bleeding out my ear holes. So for me, my heart rate has dropped considerably. And I have this, for me, I can run quite far, long period of time at a reasonable pace. But if you ask me to go 5 seconds or less per mile quicker, I can't sustain it. I drop down. So my sort of threshold window between my marathon pace and my lactate threshold has just got very, very tiny. And so what's happened is all my paces seem to be the same. So I've managed to push that up slightly in the last couple of months. I've managed to squeeze that up. So I've been doing quite a few sessions. So before I was probably running at what I would consider marathon pace around 6:22 pace, 6:24. I don't know what that gives you. Is that 2:49 or something?
2:48, 2:49.
Yeah. And then I've managed to squeeze that up in the last few months. I started being able to run between 6:14 and 6:18, which would give me 6:44, 6:55. So 2:44, 2:45.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
I haven't run a road marathon for 18 months and I ran 2:46 at Manchester.
You say your last one was Manchester, right?
Yeah, last one, yeah. Porto isn't as flat as, say, Manchester or anything, but it's not hilly. I have no idea what the weather will be like. I'm just getting my excuses in now.
I was going to say, also, sounds like a laundry list of excuses.
And I've got to be honest, I honestly don't feel that I can, because then some of my other runs have just been diabolical. So I just don't know. So I could run that time, or I could end up realizing I can't run that time, slowing down and pulling Pete through for his time
Mm-hmm.
he wants to do. So I've got that option, but then I shouldn't really have that option because that option gives me that option to do that. I'm not that sort of person that would do that. I will work as hard as I can all the way, but I have no idea what I can do. And I don't know. I honestly don't believe that I can run that fast now.
I think you can. You
So
just
if you
said
want
it.
me to predict, I want to do sub 3. I'm just going to do sub 3. Sub 3.
Sub 3. That's a bit of a difference between 2:45 and 3. But you said it. You're not that kind of person to just sit there and go, "Oh well, that'll do." Because I think we'll see something good. So
yeah, we'll see. We'll definitely. I mean, I did the 3 marathons. I did the year, was it 2019, where I did 3 marathons over 7 weeks.
Yeah.
And they got faster, apart from one where I was pacing somewhere where I was a bit slower, but they got faster, and I couldn't believe they got faster over that period. Where I think the first one I did was Barcelona, where I ran 2:48, and at mile, oh no, it's at 15k. I felt like the wheels were coming off, and I was like, "Oh God, this is awful!" And that's far too early at 15k to feel awful.
Yeah.
But I just gave myself good talking to, and I just kept going, and then I just got quicker. So I know I can do it, but I just don't know if I've got the legs anymore. I really don't know if I've got the legs anymore.
Well, there's one way to find out.
I know there is one way to find out, and you get a bottle of port in your goodie bag, so I've got to drink that before I get on the flight because it's hand luggage only.
Oh, on the way back.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I can't be too long out on the course because I've got like 24 hours to drink a bottle of port because we've got a flight back the next day.
Very good.
Early the next day. Yeah.
Well, Holly Stables, thank you very much for coming on my podcast. Good luck at Porto, and good luck to Pete as well. Pete Stables is Holly's husband. He's also my coach, strength coach. You two come as a pair in more ways than one. He's going for a sub 3, which is going to be quite impressive because was he weigh? He's like 96 kilos and he's a man mountain.
Not anymore. I mean, his whole thing is if anyone follows Pete, he wants to be the first person, because we can't find anyone that's done it, to run sub 3 and lift 500 pounds. He's deadlifted.
Okay. Fergus Crawley?
No.
Sounds like something Fergus Crawley would have had a go at.
Not Fergus.
Okay.
No, he hasn't run sub 3. I think he's run like 3:20.
Okay. All right. Well, let's see.
Yeah. So he's the only, because even Nick Bear, who's an American guy, who's run 2:48 or something, but he hasn't lifted that.
No.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what he does. Be very close, I think.
Good stuff. Well, thank you very much, Holly. We shall wrap it up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
And that's another lap done on the Maximum Mileage Running podcast. Thank you for joining me and my athletes and my guests on this wild ride through the world of ultra, road and trail running. And remember, whether it's a mountain trail or the local road, every mile you conquer makes you stronger. Keep pushing, keep laughing, and of course, keep swearing when that hill just seems a little too steep. If you enjoyed today's journey, don't forget to subscribe and leave me a nice review. Your feedback does help me go that extra mile. Until next time, this is your host, Nick Hancock, reminding you to make every mile count. Run long, run strong, and run with maximum mileage. Catch you on the next run.